Media fact checker. A real possum was found among plush toys in a Hobart Airport gift shop. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A real possum was found nestled among stuffed animals in the gift shop at Hobart Airport on Wednesday morning. The possum appeared calm when first discovered but caused pandemonium when it left the shop and wandered the departure lounge. Liam Bloomfield, multi-site manager with Lagardère AWPL at Hobart Airport, confirmed the incident and described the possum as not stressed initially. The possum was safely escorted out of the terminal by airport management without incident. The incident occurred around 11:45 a.m. on Wednesday. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC describes the possum as appeared calm but then took a walk outside the shop, which caused pandemonium, while The Guardian does not specify the possum's behavior after leaving the shop. ABC mentions redevelopment works as a possible explanation for the possum's entry, but The Guardian does not mention this detail. The Guardian highlights staff and passengers being delighted, while ABC focuses more on the logistical challenge of managing the situation. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Sri Lanka and Asia's fuel crisis due to Iran-US war blocking Strait of Hormuz. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Sri Lanka introduced a 4-day work week for state institutions, schools, and universities starting Wednesday, local time, to conserve fuel, Newscamau, ABC, Guardian. Iran blocked the Strait of Hormuz on February 28, 2024, after US-Israeli airstrikes, cutting 20 to 25% of global oil supply and spiking fuel prices, Newscamau, ABC, Guardian. Sri Lanka's fuel rationing limits motorists to 15 litres of petrol/diesel per week, with public transport allocated up to 200 litres, Newscamau, ABC, Guardian. Sri Lanka's petrol and diesel reserves are estimated to last nearly 6 weeks, but officials warn disruptions could severely impact the island, Newscamau, ABC, Guardian. Sri Lanka's President Anura Kumara Dissanayake stated we must prepare for the worst, but hope for the best during an emergency meeting, Newscamau, ABC, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscamau states Sri Lanka's 4-day week applies to schools and universities indefinitely, while ABC does not specify the duration for schools and universities. Newscamau mentions Sri Lanka's fuel rationing began on Sunday, but ABC does not specify the exact start date of rationing. Newscamau reports Sri Lanka's fuel reserves will last nearly 6 weeks, while ABC does not provide this specific duration. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Media mogul Antony Catalano charged with assault, false imprisonment, and threats, fallout across business empire. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Antony Catalano was charged by Victoria Police with assault, false imprisonment, and making threats to kill a woman on April 26, 2024, involving dragging a victim by hair and ankles and swinging a clothes iron at her head, leaving her with a broken coccyx. Catalano was granted bail on April 26 despite police requesting it be denied. Next court appearance is May 11. Catalano issued a statement admitting he has been struggling with significant mental health and substance abuse issues for some time, acknowledging he has been urged to seek help by family and friends. Catalano stepped aside from all professional obligations at Australian Community Media, ACM, for at least 6 months and checked into a rehab facility on April 29. ACM's board and executive leadership released a statement saying they are shocked and deeply concerned by the allegations, distancing the company from Catalano and prioritizing employee well-being. But not all outlets told the same story. The Age and SMH both report Catalano was granted bail despite police requesting it be denied, but no contradictions exist between these sources. The Age and SMH both report Catalano's drug use at domain events was an open secret, but SMH emphasizes cocaine use while The Age does not specify the drug type beyond drug abuse. The Age reports Catalano's $30 million penthouse was initially listed with hopes of a $33 million to $36 million sale, while SMH does not mention the original listing price. This story was covered by The Guardian, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Iran's closure threat and disruption of the Strait of Hormuz during US-Israel war. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Strait of Hormuz is a 30-kilometer wide waterway connecting the Persian Gulf to the Arabian Sea, with its narrowest point at 3.2 kilometers wide between Iran and Oman. Iran's Revolutionary Guard, IRGC, announced in March 2024 that all navigating through the Strait of Hormuz is forbidden, effectively halting or severely restricting maritime traffic. Over 2,000 ships passed through the Strait of Hormuz in a 15-day period in early February 2024, but only 166 vessels did so in the same period in early March 2024. Iran has targeted vessels in at least 20 confirmed incidents since March 1, 2024, using drones, unmanned speedboats, and anti-ship missiles. The U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright stated in March 2024 that it is not safe for shipping through the Strait of Hormuz. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Iran is rerouting ships through Iranian territorial waters, north of Larak Island, to assert control, but The Guardian does not mention this rerouting detail. ABC states that Iran's closure began shortly after the US-Israel war started in March 2024, while The Guardian's podcast does not specify a timeline for when the closure was announced or enforced. ABC cites a 20% global oil flow figure through the Strait of Hormuz, while The Guardian also uses this figure but does not attribute it to a specific source or study. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Kyle Sandilands' termination from KIIS FM and collapse of the Kyle and Jackie O show. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Kyle Sandilands was suspended from KIIS FM on March 3, 2026, after an on-air argument with Jackie O Henderson on February 20, 2026, where he criticized her work ethic and fixation on astrology, calling her almost unworkable and off with the fairies. ARN Media gave Sandilands a 14-day deadline, until midnight March 17, 2026, to remedy the alleged breach of contract or face termination, which expired on March 17, 2026. Sandilands' $100 million contract with ARN Media was terminated on March 17, 2026, ending the Kyle and Jackie O show, which had a $200 million joint contract with Sandilands and Henderson until 2034. Jackie O Henderson's $100 million contract was terminated by ARN Media after she told management she could not continue working with Sandilands, though she later denied resigning and stated she was addressing the matter legally. The Australian Communications and Media Authority, ACMA, imposed additional license conditions on ARN Media on March 16, 2026, prohibiting strong sexual content or highly offensive material in any program featuring Sandilands or Henderson for 5 years, following 9 breaches of decency provisions in 2025. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC both report that ARN Media terminated Henderson's contract after she told management she could not continue working with Sandilands, but Henderson herself denied resigning in multiple ABC and News Corp articles. The Guardian states ARN's decision was widely interpreted as opportunistic due to declining profitability, while ABC's Paul Barry suggests the termination was primarily due to pressure from the media regulator and financial pressures. The Guardian and ABC both report that Sandilands apologized to Henderson after the February 20th show, but The Guardian emphasizes his claim that ARN did not genuinely attempt to resolve the issue, while ABC focuses on Sandilands' willingness to work with Henderson or others. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Global oil crisis triggered by Middle East conflict disrupting Strait of Hormuz oil supply. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The International Energy Agency, IEA, issued a 10-point demand reduction plan on the 15th of March, 2024, urging governments to cut oil use amid the Middle East conflict, including working from home, reducing speed limits by 10 km per hour, and avoiding air travel. The IEA declared the Middle East conflict has caused the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market, with shipping through the Strait of Hormuz reduced to a trickle since Israel-US strikes on Iran, the 15th of March, 2024. About 20 million barrels of crude oil and oil products typically pass through the Strait of Hormuz daily, and its closure has pushed crude oil prices above $100 per barrel, driving up diesel, jet fuel, and LPG costs. The IEA ordered the largest release of government oil reserves in its history, 400 million barrels, on the 13th of March, 2024, to offset the supply shock. Australia's Federal Energy Minister Chris Bowen met with state counterparts on the 15th of March, 2024, to coordinate fuel supply, but stated fuel rationing was not contemplated in the immediate future. But not all outlets told the same story. News KIIS states that dozens of servos have reported running out of petrol in Australia, while KIIS and Guardian do not mention this specific issue. KIIS and SMH report that Australia was not part of a joint Western statement offering support to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, but KIIS includes opposition criticism that Australia may have been not invited or declined, while News KIIS and Guardian do not address this diplomatic omission. KIIS and SMH attribute the idea of a new windfall tax on gas firms to the ABC, but News KIIS and Guardian do not mention this proposal explicitly. This story was covered by The Guardian, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Former Liberal staffer Bruce Lehrmann faces Queensland rape trial in November 2024. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Bruce Lehrmann, 30, is charged with 2 counts of rape alleged to have occurred in Toowoomba in October 2021. The trial is scheduled to begin on November 2, 2024, in the Toowoomba District Court. Judge Deborah Richards presided over the court mention setting the trial date. Lehrmann has not yet formally entered a plea but has indicated he will plead not guilty. Defense lawyer Zali Burrows is representing Lehrmann and has not yet decided whether the case will proceed before a jury or a judge alone. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC does not mention the strip club, the vault, or the alleged false name given by Lehrmann, which News KIIS details. News KIIS does not mention the subpoenaed police material or the specific applications regarding special witness measures and evidence visibility, which ABC reports. ABC does not specify the complainant was with friends at the strip club, while News KIIS includes this detail. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian PM Albanese and Home Affairs Minister Burke heckled at Lokemba Mosque during Eid prayers. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese and Tony Burke attended Lokemba Mosque in Sydney's West on Friday morning for Eid celebrations marking the end of Ramadan. Protesters at the mosque shouted phrases including genocide supporters, disgrace, shame, and get them out of here during the event. A 33-year-old man, later identified as Mukhlis Mr, was removed from the mosque by police after a disturbance and given a move-on direction. Lebanese Muslim Association Secretary Gamal Kir delivered a statement defending the invitation of Albanese and Burke, calling engagement with government not a betrayal of Gaza-Lebanon concerns. Israel's strikes in Lebanon have killed at least 912 people, including 111 children, and wounded 2,221 others, per Lebanese Health Ministry. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Albanese was led out by police after being booed, while ABC and SMH describe him being escorted out or rushed into the mosque's office by organizers. SMH claims a 29-year-old protester named Ibrahim Seklawi was the main heckler, but News Corp Australia identifies Mukhlis Mr, 33, as the man thrown out by police. The Guardian states the man was released without charge, While News Corp Australia reports he was thrown down the stairs and given a move-on direction, no charge implied but more force used. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US military spending and humanitarian costs of the Iran conflict in early 2026. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The US spent approximately $11.3 billion in the first 6 days of its military strikes on Iran, 28th to 5th of February-March 2026, according to Pentagon officials briefing lawmakers. The Pentagon's $11.3 billion estimate excludes costs like force deployment, medical expenses, infrastructure repairs, and pre-war buildup, per multiple sources. Over 1,300 people have been killed in Iran since the strikes began, including more than 200 children, as reported by at least 2 sources. The Environmental Protection Agency's 2026 budget is $8.8 billion, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention's is $9.2 billion, and the National Cancer Institute's is $7.4 billion, all dwarfed by the first week's war spending. A girls' school in Minab, southeastern Iran, was destroyed by a US strike, killing about 175 children and teachers, per 2 sources. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Pentagon's $11.3 billion figure was limited to munitions and excluded other costs, while Article 2 implies the $11.3 billion is the total war cost for the first week, without clarifying exclusions. Article 1 cites CSIS $12.7 billion estimate by day 6, but Article 3 reports Hassett's $12 billion figure as the total since the 28th of February, no day-specific breakdown. Article 3 claims over 1,300 deaths in Iran, including 200 children, while Article 1 states more than 3,000 people are believed to have been killed, a discrepancy in total fatalities. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Donald Trump's Pearl Harbor joke during a White House meeting with Japan's PM Sanai Takaichi. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump joked about Japan's 1941 Pearl Harbor attack during a White House press conference on December 7, 2023, saying we didn't tell anybody about it because we wanted surprise. Who knows better about surprise than Japan? Japanese Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi visibly reacted with discomfort, eyes widening, shifting in her seat during Trump's remarks. The Pearl Harbor attack killed 2,390 Americans and led to the US declaring war on Japan the next day, December 8, 1941. Japan's post-WWI constitution bans the use of force except for self-defense, limiting its military involvement in conflicts like Iran. Trump later claimed Japan was stepping up to the plate in supporting US efforts regarding the Strait of Hormuz, though specifics remain unclear. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Trump's tone toward Takaichi was far more friendly than toward European leaders, while SMH emphasizes Trump's preoccupation with Iran and disinterest in Beijing made the meeting less about alliance building. The Guardian does not mention the $40 billion nuclear project or $33 billion gas investment details, which ABC highlights as meeting outcomes. SMH states Trump's summit with Xi Jinping was postponed, but this is not confirmed or denied in ABC or Guardian. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Donald Trump's response to Supreme Court ruling on tariffs and his tariff strategy post-ruling. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, Sunday, claiming he has the absolute right to impose new tariffs after the Supreme Court ruled many of his 2023 tariffs were illegal. The Supreme Court, February, found the Trump administration lacked sufficient legal justification under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, for many tariffs imposed on global countries. Trump imposed 10% tariffs on goods from much of the world under Section 122 of the 1974 Trade Act, which expire in July 2024. Trump vowed to raise the temporary 10% tariffs to 15% but has not yet done so. U.S. officials launched trade investigations last week to potentially impose new permanent tariffs replacing the repealed ones. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 mentions Trump's temporary 10% tariffs under Section 122 expire in July 2024, but Article 2 does not specify an expiration date for these tariffs. Article 1 states Trump's lunch with the Kennedy Center Board is at 11:45 a.m. Eastern Time, while Article 2 does not mention this detail. Article 1 includes Trump's meeting with U.S. Ambassador to Japan George Glass at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, which is not mentioned in Article 2. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Homicide investigation and manslaughter charge in Perth's Banksia Grove over a woman's death. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 42-year-old woman was found unresponsive at a home in Banksia Grove, Perth's northern suburbs, on Thursday morning around 9 a.m. The woman was declared dead at the scene by paramedics after attempts to revive her. The incident occurred on Mayerlee Bend, Banksia Grove. A man in his 40s was assisting police with inquiries, Article 1, and later charged, Article 2. The man was known to the deceased woman. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 reports a man in his 40s was assisting police, while Article 2 specifies the man is 47 years old. Article 1 does not mention an arrest or charge, while Article 2 states the man was arrested and charged with manslaughter. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Leadership crisis and potential spill in Victorian Labor Party ahead of 2024 election. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jacinta Allan is Victorian Premier and faces leadership spill speculation due to low approval ratings and upcoming November 2024 election. Allan's net approval rating is -37%, Demos AU poll in Herald Sun, and only 20% of voters prefer her as Premier, Resolve polling for The Age, February 2024. Deputy Premier Ben Carroll, Right Faction, and Transport Infrastructure Minister Gabrielle Williams, Left Faction, are the most likely leadership contenders. Allan dismissed leadership speculation as anonymous gossip from scallywags and stated, "She has great support from my strong and united Labour team." Victorian Labour Party has 69 seats in caucus, with Left Faction holding 39 seats and Right Faction holding the remaining 30. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports Socialist Left Faction's South East Group is directly pushing for a leadership change, but these MPs emphatically denied it to The Guardian. The Age states a factional chief offered the view that anyone other than Allan would lead the party to a better result, while The Guardian notes senior Right Faction figures are reluctant to move without Left Faction coordination. The Guardian claims Allan's hesitation to act on corruption is a major issue, but this detail is not mentioned in other sources. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Former BP executive and Thatcher advisor urges Australia to phase out petrol reliance amid Iran conflict risks. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Greg Bourne, former BP Australasia regional president and Thatcher's energy advisor, authored the op-ed in both *SMH* and *Thij Star. The Strait of Hormuz is a 50-kilometre maritime choke point for global oil shipping, currently closed to most vessels due to military threats, drones, airstrikes. Australia imports over 90% of its refined oil products, with national fuel reserves at just 36 days, below the 90-day international benchmark. Australia's main electricity grid is using record-high solar and wind generation alongside record-low gas usage as of February 2024. Australia has over 450,000 electric vehicles registered, reducing petrol-diesel demand by the equivalent of 1.2 days of fuel use, Mandela Partners data. This story was covered by Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian government response to fuel crisis amid Middle East conflict. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Anthony Albanese is convening a snap National Cabinet meeting on Thursday, 2024 date unspecified, to coordinate a national response to the fuel crisis caused by the Middle East conflict. The US and Israel launched preemptive strikes on Iran late last month, triggering global fuel price spikes and supply chain disruptions. Australia has released about 20%, 100 million litres month for 60 days, of its emergency fuel reserves due to the crisis, with petrol and diesel shortages reported in rural and regional areas. The federal government temporarily lowered fuel standards to redirect supplies into the domestic market, injecting an extra 100 million litres month of fuel. The Strait of Hormuz, a key shipping route for about 20% of global oil supply, is under threat due to the conflict, impacting fuel deliveries. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and ABC both report the government has released 20% of emergency fuel reserves, but the ABC specifies this as 6 days worth of petrol and 5 days worth of diesel, while The Guardian does not specify the duration. The Guardian reports the Greens leader Larissa Waters called for free public transport, but this is not mentioned in any other source. The Guardian and ABC both report the government has relaxed fuel standards, but only the ABC explicitly states this was done to redirect supplies into the local market. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Democrats impeach bid against Attorney General Pam Bondi over Epstein files briefing. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Democrats walked out of a closed-door briefing with Florida Attorney General Pam Bondi on Jeffrey Epstein files on Wednesday, calling it an outrageous fake hearing. The House Oversight Committee voted to subpoena Bondi earlier this month, with 5 Republicans joining Democrats to demand her testimony under oath about the Justice Department's handling of Epstein investigation files. Bondi refused to commit to testifying under oath during the briefing, prompting Democrats to walk out after less than an hour. California Congressman Robert Garcia called the briefing an outrageous fake hearing. Florida Congressman Maxwell Alejandro Frost stated Bondi was asked repeatedly, "Are you going to come and speak with us under oath?" and she refused to answer yes. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Bondi accused Democrats of using Epstein documents to distract from Trump's successes, but Article 2 does not include this specific accusation. Article 1 mentions Bondi's alleged spying on members of Congress during a DOJ visit, but Article 2 does not reference this claim. Article 1 includes Bondi's defense that no effort was made to shield Trump or high-profile figures, while Article 2 does not elaborate on this point. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.